All right, is it Clemson and bust, or is the ACC a little thicker and stronger than some would suspect? This is ACC Breakdown. We come your way each and every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time with the finest bloggers in the conference. Tonight, it's Cam Underwood from State of the U. We also have Mike McDaniel from inside the ACC. Joey Weaver joins us from the Rumble seat. And what we are going to do tonight is match up the ACC against the Pac-12. So we're taking 12 teams from the Pac-12, and we've got to lose 2 from the ACC, and we'll do that right from the middle of the conference. And we'll match up hypothetical 12 games with the ACC taking on the Pac-12. The ACC took it on the chin last week against the SEC. Final score, 44-12. Okay, before we get to these matchups, Cam's given me a look like he wanted to get in possibly on some of those games, but for another time. Yeah, we had 4 of us, Cam. We had 14 games, and we had a 44-12 margin against the SEC. So let's talk about Tennessee and Miami, maybe a bit of a cross-sectional burgeoning rivalry, and I'm going to take this back to Kellen Winslow's comments after a Tennessee game in Miami. So that I know that has nothing to do with what's going on now, but it's my attempted segue, Cam, because we remember Kellen Winslow being mighty upset when the Canes blew a close one against the Vols way back when, maybe 2003 or 4. And it's, again, the Vols and the Canes mixing it up off the field now.
Yeah, got a little recruiting rivalry going on now. In case you didn't realize or pay attention, none of our staff from the Al Golden era returned to Miami. We have a completely new staff with Mark Richt Company, and that opened the door for Larry Scott, who was our tight ends coach and interim coach, to transition to Tennessee's tight ends coach. And so what he did is he was the primary recruiter for a couple of guys, and in the 2016 cycle, those guys, Tyler Bird and Latrell Williams, flipped on signing day. Well, Bird the night before and Williams on the day of signing day to Tennessee. And that has continued through into the beginning of the 2017 cycle, because pretty much anybody who Miami is offering, Tennessee is then subsequently offering. So including a couple 2017 commits and a bunch of uncommitted guys. So by my personal research, which, is pretty good, but, not 100% accurate, I have Tennessee as having offered 7 guys after Miami has. So there's already going to be some cross-pollination anyway. So I think that there's like 15 guys total who hold offers from both schools, but Tennessee is following up. So they're saying, okay, who's Miami offered? Okay, let's offer him. Who's Miami offered? Okay, let's offer him. And that's just kind of spun forward. So I think that we're going to end up in the 15 to 20 range of players who Miami offers and then Tennessee offers on subsequently past that. So yeah, there's a little bit of kind of a follow the leader kind of thing going on with Tennessee. And yeah, no, I'm here for the rivalry. So, I mean, if you want to go after guys who we want at the top of our class, like a quarterback in N'Kosi Perry, who was committed to Miami, decommitted after the coaching change, and now Tennessee all of a sudden has him as their number 1 quarterback, and Miami, as reportedly, has him at the number 1 player in this class that we want. Hey, I'm here for the battle. So, bring it on, Rocky Top.
Okay, so Mark Richt has left the SEC, but the SEC not necessarily leaving Mark Richt and his program alone there in Miami. All right, the NFL Combine concluded on Sunday. A few news and notes as we pass it around the league here. Let's start with you, Joey. Your thoughts about what happened at the Combine in particular. You said before we came on that you took note of DJ White's performance and possibly helping himself.
Yeah, Georgia Tech only had 2 participants at the Combine. One of them was Adam Gotsis, who's currently rehabbing from a torn ACL. So he didn't really work out. He just partook in interviews as well as kind of some medical examinations, I'm sure. But DJ White, yeah, he worked out. Did actually a pretty nice job. Maybe a little better than expected. Looked pretty good in general. And I think from what I could tell, he interviewed well as well. And so, like I told you guys kind of beforehand, it wasn't anything where, he's vaulted himself into second or first round type status. But I think maybe where he was previously kind of the 5th round type, maybe he's more 3rd or 4th round now. So did himself some favors, not jumping into the spotlight, but obviously had a good weekend for sure.
course, the NFL Combine often a showcase for Florida State athletes. Mike, Jalen Ramsey showed up very well in Indianapolis.
Yeah, heck of an understatement there. He dominated pretty much every drill he did. He was probably a top 5 or 6 pick, depending on team need before the Combine. And after the Combine, the way he tested was very impressive. So he's the one clear winner in the ACC if we had to just pin one guy. But there were a bunch of winners. Sheldon Rankins at Louisville, he was one guy who kind of came out of nowhere 2 seasons ago, played really well during the 2014 season. And this past season, his run defense was good once again, but he kind of slowed down a little bit towards the end of the season, but played okay in the bowl game, played well in the Senior Bowl, and he had a very good combine. So he's tested well. He's proved he can play on the field, and he's a guy that's going to cement himself probably as a mid to late first-round pick. And, of course, you look at pretty much any player from Clemson that you saw test ended up performing pretty well. There were no real losers as far as ACC players were concerned. I guess if you want to go reach for one guy, it's not necessarily in the ACC, but he plays for Notre Dame, is Jalen Smith. From every indication, a lot of teams are really, really concerned about that knee that he tore up real bad in the Fiesta Bowl. There's possibility of nerve damage, and some people are comparing it to the Marcus Lattimore injury at South Carolina a couple of years back, and we saw that he never really was able to get healthy enough to play in the NFL. So hopefully it's not that bad for Jalen Smith. By all indications, he was probably a top 15 or 20 pick before that injury. Some mock drafts had him in top 10, so it would be really unfortunate for him to have a football career completely derailed just based off of one injury in a bowl game that really didn't matter in the grand scheme of things for his football career moving forward. So best wishes to him. And I guess he's the one real loser of the Combine if we were going to pick a guy from the ACC or the extension of the ACC in Notre Dame's case.
All right, Cam, the U has shown up on first-round draft boards unlike any other school in the country in the last 25 years. Anything stand out from what happened in the proceedings last weekend?
Artie Burns, who left early to go to the NFL draft, he performed very well. Unofficially ran 4.4 and then 4.39 in the 40. Believe that they corrected that to 4.46, which is still one of the faster times for cornerbacks, and he's one of the bigger guys at that position. We are measuring it at 6'1.5" with 33.5-inch arms, which is very lanky, which is what people are looking for. So his size and speed combination is something that's really catching people's attention. A couple guys, national writers now are talking about him as being a fringe first-round pick candidate, which is a good thing for him. And if you didn't pay attention to Artie Burns' story this year, his father's incarcerated, has been for a while. His mother passed away at the age of 44 the week of the Duke game. Unexpectedly of a heart attack. So now he is actually the custodian for his 2 younger brothers, and he has a son also. And that was one of the main things that precipitated him leaving early. So seeing him do well so he can, get a nice high draft pick status so he can provide for, his family, that he's now, the head of the family. He's the guy there. So that's, very good for him. Deion Bush, who was a 4-year player here, he ran a solid time also. So he did pretty well for himself. He's looked at as a mid-round pick, and he performed pretty well in all of the agility drills and things of that nature. And then Raphael Kirby, linebacker, who tore his knee up in the middle of our season, he only did the bench press, but if you've seen him, he's jacked. And that actually played out at the Combine. He had the most reps on the bench press activity of any linebacker who participated, with 27 reps at 225. So, he could show that he still has some strength and skill and things like that. So hopefully he'll be able to participate in the senior day, where the NFL draft day, which will be coming.
All right,
up.
for those of you joining us on Blab for the first time, this is ACC Breakdown. We come your way every Wednesday night. We're trying out the Blab platform this week because of the potential engagement in community. So please join us and give us your comments and questions as we go through tonight's show. You can catch us again on YouTube at Mark Rogers TV and various SB Nation platforms, depending on topic and teams covered, and also inside the ACC each and every week. All right, so what we're doing this week is we're matching up the ACC against the Pac-12. Unfortunately, not a whole lot of games to talk about last season. Washington State over Miami in the Sun Bowl, 20-14. UCLA in kind of an unfair matchup against Virginia at the Rose Bowl. Not a like-seeded game there, with the Cavaliers losing 34-16. And we have one lone ACC Pac-12 matchup coming up in 2016, Virginia and Oregon. So not the best rep in the world for the ACC in 2016 against the Pac-12. So let's match them up, guys. Let's start from top to bottom. And what I did here was I took out the two mid-range teams in the ACC. So I took the top 6 and the bottom 6, had to take out Duke and Virginia Tech to do a 12 versus 12 matchup. So, Cam, let's start with you. And here we go. We got Clemson, of course, coming within 5 points of a national championship, taking on Stanford, who just barely missed the college football playoff. Who do you like?
I like Clemson. They returned Deshaun Watson, and Stanford loses Kevin Hogan at the quarterback position, which I think matters. They do have Christian McCaffrey, who is amazing, and you saw that in the Rose Bowl. So, guys, if you stay up late on a Saturday, watch that guy next year on Stanford. I'm telling you. But I'm with Clemson.
All right, Mike, what do you think about this matchup with Clemson taking on Stanford?
Clemson's got Deshaun Watson. Stanford's got Christian McCaffrey. Those are going to be two Heisman front runners heading into next season. With Deshaun Watson on the offensive side of the football, he's essentially unstoppable from a quarterback standpoint. Christian McCaffrey does just about everything else for Stanford, though. Runs the football. He's a good receiver out of the backfield. Can line up in the slot. He runs kicks back, runs punts back. He does a little bit of everything for that Stanford team. I like Clemson, though. I think top to bottom, they're a better team. But I'm with Cam. Man, these people on the East Coast need to watch Christian McCaffrey next year. I don't care what game it is. They could literally be playing anybody, some no-name school you've never heard of. You need to watch him play because too many people caught on to him too late in the season. He had a real chance to win the Heisman this year. Some people, voters especially, were watching some more of his games on the East Coast because Stanford plays late at night. They sneak a little bit under the radar, but McCaffrey was good from start to finish last year and didn't get the recognition he deserved until probably about week 8 or 9 of the regular season. So people will have to watch him next season. He's not going to take anybody by surprise. I like Clemson, though.
I stay up and watch those games. And if you're talking Stanford scheduling, they don't play a whole lot of nobodies. It's 9 games in conference of the Pac-12. Then you tack on Notre Dame last year and also Northwestern, and not a whole lot of light touches for Stanford. So they lost 2 games, lost to Northwestern out of the gate, and lost to Oregon, blitzed in the second half by the Ducks. Otherwise, they make the college football playoff, still won the Pac-12, crushed Iowa in the Rose Bowl. So, Joe, we got Clemson, of course. We know how close they came to winning the whole thing, taking on Stanford in what I think would be a phenomenal football game.
I totally agree. I think it'd be a very close game. I think these two teams are actually really similar. Obviously, you've got the 2 Heisman finalists, Deshaun Watson and Christian McCaffrey. You're looking at a couple of really good defenses, pretty stout in general. I think it would be a really fun game to watch, and I'm with you guys. I mean, Christian McCaffrey is something else. I think if you're looking for kind of an ACC comparison from recent years, I think C.J. Spiller is a good place to start, which ironically is from Clemson. Again, guy that can kind of do it all, run it between the tackles to the outside, catch the ball, play special teams. I mean, the whole thing. It's really impressive watching him play. I think in this matchup, I would take Clemson. I think that you get past the 2 Heisman finalist guys, and I think Clemson has a little more offensive firepower, especially at the skill positions. And that's the reason I would take them. But I think this would be like a fascinating matchup to watch and a really, really good football game. But give me Clemson in this one.
And again, we're looking at 2015 matchups, so everybody leaving the 2 teams, going to the NFL and so forth, come back to play one more game in the spring, and it's Clemson and Stanford. I like Clemson to win, basically because they completely were all over Baker Mayfield. I think that defensive front for Clemson would be the difference in this game. And Deshaun Watson versus Christian McCaffrey, obviously Watson's got the ball in his hands each and every play. McCaffrey's got to get the football to make a difference. So Watson with more opportunities to make huge plays. All right, guys, let's move it on after a Clemson sweep of Stanford with North Carolina and Oregon. Cam, maybe the Tar Heels aren't the second best team in the ACC in 2015, but they won all their games up to the championship game. So they are the 2nd seed, taking in an Oregon team that we last saw blow a huge lead, monumental lead against TCU in a bowl game, the Alamo Bowl, losing a 31-0 cushion there. So UNC and Oregon.
Yeah, that's going to be a good game because of the style matchup with Carolina now going with the up-tempo. So you don't have a mismatch there. Both teams will be replacing quarterbacks. I think Oregon has yet another grad transfer that's coming in for them, while Carolina has their sophomore Trubisky, I think his name was, who came in and even did numbers against Miami, because I think they scored 947 points against us last year. So they have some talent at those positions. It comes down to defense for me, and Carolina really had everything click together in a great way last year. And when you have Oregon losing guys like DeForest Buckner, who had a very good combine and could be a top 5 pick, I'm just going to give a little bit of an edge to Carolina for a little bit of my personal familiarity with them and the consistency returning guys on the offensive side and defensive side.
So the Ducks got off to a bad start last year. One big loss at Michigan State, stumbled in conference, then ripped off a ton of consecutive wins, Joey, before we mentioned the debacle in the second half against TCU without their starting quarterback, who got injured in building up the big 31-point lead, taking on the Heels.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the awkward part of all of this, is that these two teams suffered arguably two of the worst losses in bowl season. Oregon losing a 31-point lead even without their quarterback. UNC giving up something like 680 rushing yards to a Baylor offense that was kind of being held together with chewing gum and rubber bands, and but you're talking about a couple of, like Cam said, very similar styles of offense, similarly kind of mostly mediocre to below average defenses. If you like fireworks, this would be a game for you. I like Carolina in this game, if only because you saw how fragile Oregon was when they had Vernon Adams versus when they didn't. That was when you go to the second quarterback, they became completely inept on offense. And knowing that if UNC were to have lost Marquise Williams, you've at least got Trubisky there, someone that could sort of, keep the ship afloat while Williams is out. I think that's enough for me. And again, all sorts of firepower all over the field on both offenses. So it would be a wildly entertaining game to watch. But I'll take the Tar Heels.
Okay, Mike, you got North Carolina, who finished unscathed in the ACC in the regular season, taking on an Oregon team that got off to a rough start but rallied.
Yeah, I think I'm with these guys here. It's going to be a clean sweep for North Carolina. The reason why is a lot of what was just covered by with both of them. That and the fact that North Carolina's offense, they're just so dynamic. No matter who's playing quarterback, they just have so many playmakers on the outside, receivers, tight ends. You got a million running backs from Elijah Hood, TJ Logan. I mean, they're loaded. So many different playmakers on the offensive side of the football. We saw the addition of Gene Chizik as defensive coordinator. You wouldn't have known it in the bowl game, but North Carolina really improved on the defensive side of the ball last year. 2014, they really, really struggled, one of the worst defenses in college football. You saw the improvement, and when looking at Oregon, they're not the same offense that they were a couple of years ago when they had Marcus Mariota, not even close. And when Vernon Adams was in the game last year for Oregon, they were decent. And when he was out of the game, they struggled. And with North Carolina's offense, I feel like whoever you put at the quarterback position, he's going to have a billion playmakers to work with. I just don't think the difference in quarterback really at North Carolina makes a whole lot of difference to whether or not that offense is able to go. Now, don't get me wrong, Marquise Williams was awesome last year, but when looking at a guy like Mitch Trubisky for the Tar Heels, I think he could slide in and do some of the similar stuff that Marquise Williams is able to do, albeit he is a sophomore. So I like North Carolina in this one. It would be the first team to 50 points probably wins. They both score a ton, and it would be a really fun game to watch if you're into offensive football. If you're a purist and really like to watch good defensive play, you'd probably not enjoy this game.
Correction, Mike, not a clean sweep. You're not counting my vote. I think Oregon wins this game by 20 points. I don't think it's close. I don't see North Carolina staying in this game. I think once Oregon got things on track early, Vernon Adams was hurt. He had a broken finger. Once he got on track, they beat Stanford. They beat USC. They beat much better teams than North Carolina. I don't think North Carolina hung with any really, really good teams. They hung with Clemson to a certain extent, but Marquise Williams hitting on 13 to 35 passes. I just think what we saw against Baylor in the bowl game would be conducive to what we would see against an Oregon team that's known for throwing and spreading people out, but has a beast of a running back in Royce Freeman, who's one of the best in the business. I don't think that they would stop him. And I think Oregon wins they win like a 45-30 type game. So that's my pick on that one. We drop down to the 3 seed. Florida State with a bit of a down year for them, Cam, taking on Washington State, who you're familiar with in seeing in the Sun Bowl.
Florida State by a whole lot of points. If last year was basically the year that people were going to get Florida State. They had a very young team. They had Erwin James, who was a true freshman and is, built like an NFL All-Pro at a safety position. He came in and they kind of slow played him and eventually started him. And now you're going to have him as a sophomore. You're going to have all these guys back. Another top 3 recruiting class. They do still have some questions at quarterback. I'm not a big fan of Sean McGuire. I don't think that he's that good. I didn't think that he was that good last year. But there's something to be said for experience. So even if a middling talent like McGuire has another year of experience, then you can control the ball, things like that. Oh, hey, wait. And, they have Dalvin Cook, which is the thing. Washington State, they're going to try to spread them out. They're going to try to throw the ball around, and they were able to beat us in this bowl game because of that cursed, infernal halfback pass. Anyway, Florida State, 3 touchdowns or more. It's going to be ugly, and I don't know if I'll enjoy it, but it'll be, yeah.
Okay, Joey, one reminder that maybe the most forgotten play in college football last year was that Washington State had a 75-yard drive, final minute against Stanford at home to beat the Cardinal. That already made 5 field goals, missed like a makeable 40-yarder to beat Stanford that would have sent Washington.
I think I'm having some connection issues. I think I know where you're going with that, though. So I think that the Washington State-Stanford game was a bit of a result of a poor matchup for Stanford in particular. I think that their defense was much better in the front 7 than it was in the secondary.
I'm still here.
You're still here? All right, you hear me? All right, good deal.
Yeah.
I think that Stanford's defense was a lot better in the front 7 than it was in the secondary. And so an offense that was able to pass the ball like Washington State did was really able to kind of exploit that. And I think that was kind of the basis. I'm with Cam on this one. I think this is maybe the biggest mismatch on the card. I think that Florida State would be able to run away with this one. Florida State is about as talented as they come, again, in the entire country. Defensively would be on top of Washington State. Especially a good way to beat that offense is to win the battle up front and get after the quarterback. And I think Florida State would have no problem doing that against the Cougar offense and the Cougar defense. At times when Florida State has had problems, even then, like that defense was not good enough to hold Florida State to, even 28, 31 points. So I'm with Cam. This is a big, big mismatch to me. Probably the biggest one on the entire board tonight. Give me Florida State in this one.
So that's 2 of us all in on Florida State, and then we got the Florida State guys. So Mike,
let's make it 3. That? So I'm on board with Florida State as well. When you look at Dalvin Cook, he's the best running back in the country. I think he was better than Derrick Henry last year. Derrick Henry got more love because he was playing for Alabama. You look at Dalvin Cook, he's playing with an injured hamstring and all. He's going up and down the field against teams. Some teams that should have been able to stop him when he's hurt, not 100%. But Cook's going up and down the field. He's playing at less than 100% for most of the season. He's still putting up unbelievable numbers. Florida State secondary, extremely young outside of Jalen Ramsey last year. But you look at their secondary, they got Trey Marshall, Derwin James, like you said, Cam. He's a guy that has an all-pro NFL body. He's a huge, huge defensive back. He's going to be one of the top players in the country next year as well, especially in the secondary. He's going to be extremely underrated because not a lot of people outside the ACC really know who he is yet. He's a guy that's really going to be able to make an impact. He's going to take college football by storm as far as defensive backs are concerned. He's going to be named to a bunch of award watch lists. I can promise you that, and people still aren't going to have a clue who he is. So I think when you look at a matchup between Florida State and Washington State, look, Washington State's going to throw the ball 100 times, but it can't run the football when push comes to shove. I think Florida State would be able to get pressure on the quarterback, and that's why I think they would ultimately be able to win the game.
Yeah, we basically all see the same thing. I know I missed last week though, but when you have a comparison of Florida State versus some of the top SEC teams, I think that would be a good matchup. But then when you go and then you say, okay, they're going to go against a Washington State kind of thing, that's going to be pretty lopsided. So, hey, there goes Mark back. So, yeah,
you guys have a clean sweep of Florida State. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's right.
Yeah. Everybody all in on Florida State.
I'm with you. So I would not be surprised if Washington State upset Florida State. That would not surprise me in the least. I think that they're an underrated team, and I think that they tremendously improved. But the athletes on Florida State and Washington State, that's not a fair fight. It's not a close comparison. I don't think Washington State's the third best team in the Pac-12, just like I don't think North Carolina is the second best team in the ACC, but it just turned out that way. Washington State played over their heads. They played great, but Florida State, much better athletes. Unless Florida State had one of those offensive games like they had against South Florida, Wake, BC, it's possible. But the athleticism on the two teams is not comparable. Florida State wins in a clean sweep on my side. Drop it down to the 4 game here, Cam. We got Pitt overachieving. I know you saw them late in the season against Miami. You pretty much dominated the game. They lost to better teams. North Carolina had control of that game too, but Pitt overachieved. They went 6-2 in the ACC. They're taking on a USC team, ultra talented, but they lost 5 games.
Yeah, it's for USC recently. It's been a watered down version of what's been going on with Miami. Very talented in comparison to their opponents, and yet not as successful as they would like. And I'm not saying it's exactly the same. I know Miami has been very bad for our standards over here, a losing season, 8-5 again last year, things like that. But like you said, USC lost 5 games last year, and they always have everybody's All-Americans. There's all these schools on the West Coast that everybody tries to go and get their All-American high school players, and they say, okay, cool. Yeah, thanks for visiting. Thanks for flying me out. Fight on. I'm going to play for USC. So they have a lot of talent there. And, I think Todd Helton, is it Todd Helton?
Clay Helton.
Clay, there it is, Clay Helton. Yeah, so I was thinking some baseball. I was watching that earlier, yeah. Exactly, but and he was a college quarterback at Tennessee, by the way. So there's the Tennessee connection again. Anyway, so USC, I think they have a lot of talent. I think that Clay Helton's going to go in there. T. Martin is their offensive coordinator, and they have a lot of passion there. And they're trying to recapture the glory of years past, just like Miami is. But they have more talent than Miami does at this point. So I think that's a bad matchup for Pittsburgh. And I think the USC is going to go in there and punch them in the mouth.
Keep in mind that USC's 5 losses, Stanford twice, once in the Pac-12 championship game, Notre Dame, Oregon, Washington would be the one stumble at home at the Coliseum. All right, Joey, we got USC who made it all the way to the Pac-12 championship game in a kind of watered down Pac-12 South last year, taking on a Pitt team that overachieved in Pat Narduzzi's first season.
Yeah, I think Cam's comparison of Southern Cal and Miami over the last few years, I think is actually a really good one, a really accurate one. All sorts of talented, have never had any problems with recruiting, but somehow kind of find ways to stumble throughout the year. And your point about who their losses were to me was kind of where I was going to go with this. So they lost to Wisconsin in the bowl game. I could see the motivation issue coming into play. So I don't want to really take that into account. But of the other 5 losses, you're talking about Stanford twice, Notre Dame once. So that's 3 losses to New Year's Six teams. Oregon, who, again, was right on the cusp of New Year's Six and capable of beating most anybody in the country. And then the head scratcher to Washington. So there's not a whole lot to be ashamed for on that schedule. You look at what they were able to do. I mean, they had a very up and down kind of season when they were working, when that offense was working. Teams like Pittsburgh, very defensively sound, but I'm not sure that they were highly defensively talented. I think that they would have some problems kind of stopping it. I'd have a tough time taking Pitt in this one, especially I don't know that their offense was explosive enough to kind of keep up with a USC. So I would take the Trojans in this matchup. But I think depending on what you get week to week, I mean, this is one of the ones I feel least confident in kind of on the board tonight.
Okay, Mike, 2 ends of the spectrum in regards to what we perceive to be talent issues with Pitt overachieving, USC possibly underachieving, but still trying to recover from scholarship reductions and a bit thin in terms of depth, meeting neutral field, all these games, Pitt, USC.
Yeah, Pittsburgh's kind of a one-trick pony on offense, and that's the biggest problem I have with them. They have Nate Peterman at quarterback. He's a glorified game manager. I mean, I don't want to just destroy the guy here, but last year we saw that he had ability to run the football a bit. He was able to scramble out of trouble from time to time, but he was a guy that really prided himself on not making any mistakes. And when he was forced to throw the football, it didn't really go well for Pittsburgh because they relied on that running game so much with Kadri Allison. The year before, we saw with James Conner before he got sick. He's a very good runner as well. And Pittsburgh's a team that really has lined up and tried to hit you in the mouth, kind of an old style of football, just line up and run the football as well as you can and then let the chips fall where they may when you drop back and try to pass the football. But Pat Narduzzi, he's got the defense turned around, heading in a good, solid direction. I know they slipped up a bit in the bowl game against Navy, but when looking at Pittsburgh's defense, I really like what they were able to do for a majority of the season last year. But to be honest, they never faced a team like USC with all the playmakers they have on the outside. USC was a team, like you guys mentioned, they underachieved. They played a very tough schedule. And outside of that Washington loss, I mean, where's that bad loss they really had? So I would take USC in this one just because I think they have too much offense for Pittsburgh. As we saw, a certain type of offense can really disrupt Pittsburgh. That crazy option that Navy runs, just they went right up and down the field on them, which is really troubling because really it's just a bunch of run keys. And Pittsburgh was so good against the run for most of the season and wasn't able to shut that down. And when looking at USC, if they're able to run the football at all, that will open up that passing game. And they got too many receivers on the outside for that Pittsburgh secondary to contend with. So I'd take USC in this one by a couple touchdowns, actually. I'd like the Trojans kind of big.
Yeah, I don't have to give this one too much thought. I just think USC is a much more talented team, although Wisconsin beat USC, and I'm not going to conjecture on motivation in this game. I just think Wisconsin flat out beat them. And if Wisconsin can do it, even though I think the Badgers are markedly better than Pitt, but they're similar teams, and there's not that much of a disparity there. I think if Wisconsin could pull it off, Pitt could do it as well. It wouldn't shock me, but I would have to take the Trojans by a healthy touchdown to 10 points against Pitt. All right, let's go down to the 5 seed, a Utah team that beat Michigan, beat Oregon, got as high as number 3 in the country, faltered down the stretch in losing 3 games, rallied for a bowl win against BYU, taking on a Louisville team that Bobby Petrino is known for grooming quarterbacks and throwing the football all over the place, and he had a defense, and he had issues in the passing game. And finally, Lamar Jackson emerged and played some pretty good football. So what do you got here, Cam, between Louisville and Utah?
This is one of the more interesting matchups for me. Utah, they did start out against Michigan, and they won that game. I saw them a few times, trying to be a better blogger, so staying up on late, Saturday nights to watch those West Coast games. But they really have some talent. Their quarterback was nice. Their running back is very nice. They had a couple of wide receivers, get a couple of JUCO kids out there who can really fly, really move. They've actually recruited South Florida pretty well. I live in South Florida, so seeing some of the elite high school talent or that right at the top of that second tier, bottom of that first tier kind of talent go out there. So, you have a Andre Godfrey from Miramar High School who's going to be a starter out there now. You got a couple, Zach Moss and Tyler Huntley and Damari Simpkins, all 3 from Hallandale High School going out there. So you have some South Florida speed out there, but then you have, those Samoan kind of guys out there. So you got some size with that too. So that's a veteran team, very well coached out there. Dennis Erickson on that staff, Miami Hurricanes former coach, NFL former coach. Whittingham's doing a very good job. And then that's just a tough matchup. Louisville, they played very good defense last year, lost a couple of those guys. Sheldon Rankins, we talked about in the NFL Combine section. So he's a guy who leaves out of there. But you have, a 4-headed monster at quarterback. I think that they've taken one of those guys now and put him to wide receiver. They have a couple running backs who are pretty good. So they have a system where they get guys in and they develop them. They don't play necessarily day one, but Petrillo coaches them really well. This is like a field goal game to me. I need to know where the neutral site is going to be. Is it going to be Is it going to be in Arizona or Kansas City? So right in the middle.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna go with Louisville by a field goal, but I mean it could go.
I guess they're playing in the St. Louis Rams Dome, whatever they call that. I can't remember the name of it. Nobody's playing there anymore, so it's about halfway. Joey, what do you got for this game? Because I initially thought Utah mark it down. Then I started thinking, wait a minute, Utah not explosive, not playmakers that are going to scare you on the outside. Louisville got better and better, beat an SEC team in Texas A&M in the bowl game. Very strong on defense. Devontae Booker, one of the best backs in the nation for Utah. Yeah, I'm with Cam. This is a toss-up for me.
Yeah, so this is one of the more bizarre ones for me to look at because this felt like 2 teams that over the course of the season were kind of going in complete opposite directions. I mean, you look at the results of September and maybe even like midway through October, and it was like Utah was legitimately a top 5, top 10 team in the country. I mean, they were playing extremely well, firing on all cylinders on both sides of the ball, doing really well. And then down the stretch just kind of faltered. I mean, even in some of their wins, they had a 20-14 win over Colorado. They won their bowl game 35-28 over BYU, but that was a bizarre game where they scored 35 points in the first 7 minutes of the game off of several turnovers and then almost lost it. Meanwhile, Louisville at the beginning of the year, they had a close loss to Auburn that looked a whole lot better than it actually was when you realize how good Auburn wasn't. And kind of looked awful midway through the year. I thought they were going to miss a bowl game. But you're right. I mean, they pulled it together, looked better and better. Lamar Jackson kind of came on as the QB, looked really good in the bowl game against Texas A&M. This is a tough matchup. And I think, again, this is a game being played Utah hands down. I think you start talking about playing it like we talk about if we want to play it in the spring here or kind of as another bowl game. I think Louisville's winning that game towards the end of the year. Again, defense on both sides. Louisville's defense, especially the front seven, still really good in the post-Charlie Strong era. Utah has playmakers on their defense as well. They're recruited very well. I think I would stick with Louisville late in the season or, here in the spring type of thing. And I think that Louisville team is going to get better next year, especially on offense. They had some young playmakers and going to get some coaching by Petrino. So give me Louisville in this one, but I think you guys are spot on. This is a toss-up, kind of coin flip kind of game.
Yeah, two very similar teams. Lamar Jackson with the mobility factor over Travis Wilson, the starting quarterback for Utah, who's got a ton of starts under his belt, but pretty much a passer out of the pocket. So, Mike, who do you like in this one?
To be honest with you, I actually like Louisville by 7 to 10 points. I know it's like a toss-up when you look at start breaking down individual positions, but when trying to evaluate this game, look at like this. Travis Wilson is a guy for Utah, really struggled hanging on to the football. They turned the ball over a ton at Utah. It really stunted their growth last year as a team. I thought when you looked at Utah in the game against Michigan, Travis Wilson, he played pretty well in that game, but throughout the course of the season, he threw a lot of interceptions, some questionable. You look at his decision-making, you have to wonder what he's really thinking. At times, it was kind of that bad, that head-scratching. So I think when looking at Utah, top to bottom, they do have a lot of talent on their team, but Louisville's a team that got better as the season went on. Their front seven was good start-finish last year. Auburn kind of threw some weird things at him in the opener, and it is the first game of the season, so I think you have to give them a pass. But I think Louisville, if they're able, with their front seven, to put some pressure on the quarterback and force some turnovers, I think they can easily win this game, especially when you look at Lamar Jackson and his development as the season went on. So I'd actually take Louisville to win this game.
So for this one, it may not just be where do they play, but when do they play? Do they play in September? Do they play now? Do they play in December? I initially thought Utah wins this game, but man, I'm coming around to Louisville and Lamar Jackson's dual threat ability, and I think he got better and better passer. I'm changing my mind. I'm going with the Cardinals to win this one and make it a 3-1 ACC margin over the Pac-12 in this one. Now we go down to a game that I think is great, and it brings back memories of Edgerrin James against UCLA in 1998 when they knocked off the Bruins, who were headed to a national championship game, and Cam will remember that one well. I thought I would do you proud there, Cam. So 38-35 I think was the score when nobody gave Miami a chance, and they knocked off the Bruins and Kate McNown at the Orange Bowl. So UCLA 2016 against Miami, and a couple of really good young quarterbacks in Brad Kaya taking on Josh Rosen.
Yeah, that's a really good game, and that's going to obviously be the marquee matchup, both of those being Southern California guys. In case you didn't know, Brad Kaya was from L.A. Well, now you know. It's going to be interesting, and the thing for me is, obviously, Miami has a whole new staff. We don't know – well, we know what they want to do, but we haven't seen it even in spring practice yet. So Mark Richt comes down from Georgia. He's a traditional pro-style offense kind of guy. Brings in Thomas Brown, who played running back for him and was a position coach for Melvin Gordon for a year, and then Nick Chubb last year. So Wisconsin and then Georgia. As a running backs coach, he's the offensive coordinator, and he's a two running back kind of guy because he played in a rotation at Georgia with No Sean Marino. he coached the rotation up there at Georgia. So, he wants to do that. And, Miami has those pieces. And I think across the board to the top level, Miami has some very, very good talent. Obviously, I think that the depth has been questionable with some of the recruiting practices from Al Golden. You transfer that out to UCLA. They have Rosen, who started from day one, just like Brad Kaya, and was clearly the best quarterback on the team. And he had some very, very strong games. They also have, some of that Southern Cal speed. They have some, very good players out there. That's a game that's going to be really interesting, only for, like I said, the fact that I don't really know what to expect out of Miami. And just kind of going, I would be stepping out on faith to say Miami, and I'm sitting here wearing a Miami Hurricanes shirt, so obviously you know who I root for. But I'm just going to say for the level of consistency, and because I haven't seen anything out of this Hurricanes team that's been good in a decade, I'm going to go with UCLA. And I'm just going to say, for all of those Hurricanes fans watching this, I hope that I'm wrong.
And we'll never know. So Joey,
Exactly.
When I look at the board, other than the obvious of Clemson, Stanford, I could only see one game. This might be the one I would choose, UCLA taking on Miami.
Yeah. Kind of what Cam was saying, about how Miami can kind of be inconsistent. I think the same could be said for UCLA. I mean, this is giving me a lot of Pac-12, mainly UCLA Twitter hate, but I think of UCLA a little bit as kind of like USC light. I mean, a almost as talented but equally inconsistent team. You never really know what you're going to get when UCLA came out of the gate. Now, I will say that they were also sneakily one of the most injured teams in the country. I think there was a point, about halfway to maybe the 2/3 point of the season where obviously from watching a lot of Georgia Tech games, they had missed a ton of games from their players. But Georgia Tech was actually number 2 in the country in games missed due to injury to UCLA. They lost Miles Jack early, if I remember correctly. Lots of injury concerns. Now, I thought also it's a very interesting quarterback matchup with Josh Rosen and Brad Kaya, a couple of future first-round draft picks, I would imagine, playing quarterback in the game. I might lean UCLA here, and that's just purely I feel like we need to have another Pac-12 team winning a game because I don't know that the ACC could actually clean sweep the top of the Pac-12. But at the same time, I think that after several years of Al Golden recruiting versus several years of Jim Mora has been able to do with that UCLA team, I think that team has a little more depth and is in a little better position to win a game, if assuming both teams are fully healthy and come out and play well. But at the same time, again, I mean, these are two of the more inconsistent yet very talented teams, I think, in the country. So very easily a toss-up, but I'm going to take the Bruins here.
Okay, Joey, you touched upon the injuries at UCLA. Miles Jack was the one that caught everybody's attention. I can't think of the corner that they lost early in the season. He's their best corner, and Eddie Vanderdoes, their pass rushing specialist at the outside. By the time they faced a 5-7 Nebraska team in the bowl game, they were completely ravaged on the defensive front and got ripped by Nebraska's rushing attack in that game. Mike, we got UCLA taking on Miami, Kaya and Rosen.
Yeah, it's a complete toss-up, to be honest with you. I thought with Miami, they obviously struggled early on in the season. I thought Larry Scott kind of him taking over middle of the season, I think tempered expectations a little bit just because the season had gotten off to such a strange start, including that loss to Clemson. I'm not sure anybody was expecting it to be quite as bad as it was. But when looking at Miami, I think under Larry Scott, they at least were able to right the ship to a degree. With UCLA and Josh Rosen, they really, outside of the first 3 or 4 games, Rosen was really up and down his freshman year. I mean, a lot of people were impressed with him early on in the year. He was real up and down, real inconsistent, and he looked like a freshman throughout most of the year. He obviously he's going to be a very good player. We've seen the glimpses of that already. We know Brad Kaya is a good quarterback. He's experienced. If I had to take a team to win this game, I guess I'd take Miami by a field goal. I'm not confident in that at all, though. Both teams are extremely talented. They haven't necessarily been coached at their talent level over the last few years. I think that's for certain. But the talent is there on both sides of the football, and it would be a fun game with a lot of athletes, but I'm not really sure who would win. I guess I'll take Miami by a field goal.
So the one thing that may get lost is UCLA, with all the great recruiting by Jim Mora, didn't have any great dynamic playmakers on the outside. A lot of workmen efforts. Jordan Payton, who showed well at the NFL Combine, surprisingly, ran very good times, was not a game changer or game breaker at UCLA. I do like the Bruins to win it. I do think Rosen is great. I think he had a really good freshman year. Yeah, he showed some pains at times. I think he threw 11 picks. But, man, a lot was put on his shoulders. And Paul Perkins, one of the best backs in the country for UCLA. Of course, he will not be around for 2016. So Bruins win this one 3 out of 4, according to us. We'll drop it down to an NC State Cal game with Jared Goff back on the field, back from the NFL draft, Cam, to take on NC State.
Well, you're bringing
this
back?
is 2015 we're playing. All these games, 2015.
Well, I mean, that's the only way that I think Cal's going to be competitive in the game. Is if they, I mean, like, no. With Goff, that's the only chance that they have. If you take Goff off of that team, because he couldn't wait to declare for the draft. I don't think that they have any kind of shot. With him there, I think that it is a competitive game going up against Jacoby Brissett and Matt Days and the NC State team. NC State very inconsistent. They played up. They always play up to Florida State because they're in the same division. And Mike can attest to that. Anytime that they play up at North Carolina State, they obviously bring the very best out of themselves to play against Florida State. So sometimes they rise to the occasion, but then other times they can get beat by the Boston Colleges of the world. And you look like, what? How is this the same team? But then again, you could have said that about Miami in pretty much any game for the last decade, but I digress. So with Cal there, or with Goff there, I think that Cal has a chance. Cal's defense was pretty bad, even though they clicked in a couple of games there. I'm still going to lean with North Carolina State just because I think they're a more well-rounded team as opposed to just fighting the right arm of Jared Goff, which, he put up some nice numbers in some games that were still some losses, and people talked about his personal performance, but, it's a team game, not an individual game, so North Carolina State's will be my team.
Right, Joey, for time purposes, we'll speed through these. What do we got with Cal and NC State?
NC State is the most exceedingly average team I can think of. They didn't win a single game that they shouldn't have. They didn't lose a single game that they shouldn't have. Performed exact expectations. Cal, on the other hand, with their offense, is able to jump up and beat people. If this game is being played in Raleigh, I would be tempted just because Carter Finley can be tough. But give me Cal on this one.
All right, Mike, what do you think with Jared Goff back on the field against Jacoby Brissett?
Yeah, with Jared Goff, if he could have been a one and done, he absolutely would have. He couldn't wait to get out there, like Cam said. As far as NC State's concerned, Joey, you hit the nail on the head. Outside maybe the Virginia Tech game, which, I was obviously watching, I don't really understand how NC State just decided they weren't going to show up to Lane Stadium in that Friday night game. I mean, Virginia Tech was playing with Brendan Motley. We saw he was just so up and down, not a great passer, not exceedingly athletic. He can run the football a little bit, but Virginia Tech's offense with Motley in the game was not anything to write home about, and they were still able to control the tempo against NC State and pretty easily win that football game. I guess with Goff on the field, I think Cal wins by 2 or 3 touchdowns. I'm not impressed with NC State at all, really. So I guess I'd take Cal.
Cal played a much tougher schedule, and the one that they showed up and won was against Washington State, 34-28. Otherwise, fairly close losses against the likes of USC, UCLA, Oregon, Utah. They basically stayed in games and lost to all the tough teams in the Pac-12 before disposing of Air Force 56-36 in the bowl game. So I go with Goff and I go with Cal. All right, now we go to Huskies Washington team against Virginia. So we're out of bowl participation for the ACC. The Huskies made a bowl game against a very difficult Pac-12 schedule. They played Boise State out of the conference, and they defeated, I believe, it wasn't Tulsa. It was Southern Miss in a bowl game, Cam. Washington, Virginia, it's starting to get ugly.
Yeah, definitely starting to get ugly there. I don't like Virginia. I don't think that they're very good. I don't think that their coaching – well, no, they got the new coaching staff. That's right. They were not very good, and they got a new coaching staff. So they brought in Bronco Mendenhall from BYU.
But London's got to come back and coach this game.
Oh, Jesus. Then give me Washington by 10. Ugh, London. Yeah. Washington.
All right, Joey, what do you think with the Huskies and the Cavaliers, which I defend Virginia constantly by saying they played the toughest non-conference schedule, in my opinion, in the country. Boise State, UCLA, Notre Dame.
That is true. That is super commendable. I mean, you look at teams that played teams that they didn't have to. Virginia does that as well as anybody. I think it's pretty clear that we've reached the point where we've removed the middle of the conference because we go down the line and you got some visibly better teams in the Pac-12 from here. Washington played way better towards the end of the year. They've got some young talent that's going to be growing towards next year. Virginia, I have not a whole lot that I like about them, so I'll take Washington.
Okay, Mike, we get the Huskies, we get the Cavs, and we've said it a number of times. We do commend Virginia for playing that brutal schedule, which included a near miss against Notre Dame, in which they played extremely well.
Yeah, under London, Virginia is really bad, so Washington.
Okay. I like the Huskies as well. Nobody knows it, but top 10 or 15 defense in the country at Washington, front seven, remarkable NFL players. They're really good on defense. I think it'd be a slugfest. I'm not saying Washington runs away with that game. I think they win this one. All right, Arizona State made a bowl game. They went 6-6. They underachieved. They were a top 15 team to start the season. 6-6, lost by 1 point in their postseason game against West Virginia, taking on a Syracuse team. Cam, highlight of the season was probably staying within LSU territory for about 3.5 quarters.
I'm sorry, that was Arizona State, Syracuse. Okay. ASU, I think that they just have a little bit more explosion for the 2015 version of Syracuse. Yeah, and I don't really think that Syracuse was very good at all. So this is more about Syracuse being pretty bad than anything else. But
yeah, we got a one-win team in the ACC. Joey taking on an Arizona State team that, again, underachieved based on the preseason ranking, but still went 6-6 and went to a bowl game.
Yeah, similar to the NC State game. I think that if we're playing this in the Carrier Dome, I'm a little more tempted to lean Syracuse maybe. But I just think Arizona State has a little more firepower on the offensive side, certainly for now at least. I'll take the Sun Devils.
What you got here, Mike? Syracuse and Arizona State.
Arizona State underachieved. They have a lot of talent. Syracuse does not have a lot of talent, so Arizona State.
All right, now we go to a Rich Rod team. Arizona taking on Georgia Tech. We know the plight of the Yellow Jackets after winning the Orange Bowl, going 3-9, winning just a game in the ACC, but played a lot of close games. Arizona had a pretty awful season, but lost Scooby Wright, the defensive player of the year in the country last season, going back to 2014. Anu Solomon, a freshman player who was freshman of the year in the Pac-12 the previous season, injured for much of 2015. So we bring back Arizona's quarterback and best player on defense to take on the Yellow Jackets camp. Georgia Tech, Arizona.
Georgia Tech, Arizona, that's an interesting game because that's definitely a mismatch of styles. You have Joey's beloved triple option system versus Rich Rod's spread read option system up tempo against that 3-3-5. So Arizona would definitely have to switch out of that 3-3-5 defense somewhat. Otherwise, Georgia Tech, even being a little bit down last year, I think that they're going to run all over Arizona because you can't have a three-man front against a Georgia Tech offense. That's a non-sustainable kind of formation. So really kind of interesting for me. If Georgia Tech stays behind the sticks, obviously, which is what we say every single time anybody plays Georgia Tech, then I think that Arizona can have some success there, but they're kind of a Jekyll and Hyde situation also. Anu Solomon was pretty good. Rich Rodriguez actually knows what he's doing. But if they can get together on defense a little bit, then I think
Arizona, Joey, Wildcats, and your beloved Yellow Jackets.
Yeah, Georgia Tech obviously not very good last year. Had all sorts of problems in the offensive line. If Arizona's defense again could kind of put forth a good effort and let Georgia Tech beat themselves, which they had a nice propensity for doing last year, and I have to think that's kind of how it would go. It's weird thinking that Georgia Tech's defense would be the one keeping them in the game. I think Rich Rodriguez's offense would be a little too much for that defense to overcome. I think the Wildcats win this one. I can't take Georgia Tech in this game.
Okay, Mike, what do you say? Georgia Tech and Arizona.
It's an intriguing game for many of the reasons that you guys just said, but I like Arizona more than most, I think. I think they're really talented. They underachieved at times last year. I think Rich Rod overall is a pretty good coach. I know he's a heck of a recruiter. I know that for sure. How can you get guys to go play at Arizona? I mean, that's beyond me, especially with Todd Graham recruiting as well as he has at Arizona State. So I'd actually take Arizona in this game just because Georgia Tech, you can't trust them. They turned the ball over. They actually were pretty undisciplined last year for a Paul Johnson team. A lot of just range penalties, and they struggled on defense. So I'd take Arizona.
All right, the Pac-12 is on a 16-game winning streak. All right, we go to the final two seeds, Cam. We've got a Wake Forest, one win in the ACC, taking on Colorado, who was improved last year but still pretty bad in the Pac-12.
Yeah, but the opposition is Wake Forest, Colorado. And I think that would be an indictment of Colorado if they couldn't win that game, just because Wake Forest is terrible. They're one of the worst teams in captivity. So, because I think it would be disrespectful if I chose against Colorado there, because even if they're bad.
All right, Joey, one win for Wake, of course, in the conference was that sterling 3-0 game against BC, and they're taking on Colorado.
Wow, Colorado's not good. They're better than Wake Forest. I'll take Colorado in this one.
All right, Mike, what are you feeling here? The Buffs and the Demon Deacons.
We miss our buddy Dan Rubin from BC Interruption tonight because we know he would go into his soliloquy about the BC Wake Forest game from this past year. God, that's one of the worst college football games I think I've ever seen in my entire life. Just because I had to watch that. I didn't have to watch it. It was actually kind of entertaining TV, though. I've never seen a team screw up that many times inside crunch time. It was pretty unbelievable. Colorado's terrible, too, though.
Okay. Trying to follow that analysis, but
Yeah, Colorado's terrible, too. But they got to be better than Wake Forest.
All right, and finally, Cam, Boston College, despite having one of the top 3 ranked defenses in the country across the board in all the major categories, did not win a game in the ACC, taking on Oregon State, who went winless in the Pac-12, did win a couple games outside of conference, as did BC.
Yeah. This is just like the last one. But I see the thing about it is Boston College's defense was elite. And that was what kept them in so many games, even like that barn-burning 3-0 game against Wake Forest that you just referenced. But I think that's going to make it. It's going to be a dogfight. I mean, we joke about it and everything, but Boston College is going to play you. They're going to play you tough. So you're going to have to go in there. You're going to have to earn that. And Mike will tell you. I mean, look, the beginning of that game against Florida State, that was nothing easy. And Florida State's a damn good team. And it took some time before they were able to get traction also. So, we can denigrate them and say they didn't win any of those games. But, that's a team that fights on defense, and that's their calling card. They just have absolutely no chance against any defense with their offense. They have no skill position players. Their quarterback situation, I think that they got a guy out of the stands to come play quarterback, maybe, running back. They saw, taking something quickly in the dining hall, going to restock some food and brought him out there. I mean, their offense is terrible. And with the offense that is that bad, then I can't really pick them to win. So I have to go with Oregon State. But it's going to be an ugly 6-3, 3-0 kind of ball game because that's what Boston College is going to do to you.
All right, Joey, Oregon State, BC.
As much as I can't stand Boston College's offense, and Cam is going to laugh at me for saying this, I'm going to take the Eagles in this game. I think the defense is good enough that it would keep them in the game. So one of the things I looked at is Oregon State's schedule. They lost 10 of their last 11 games. Only one of those was lost by single digits. And Boston College kind of had a knack for keeping themselves in games, even against good teams like Notre Dame and such. I think especially if Oregon State's offense were to get a little sloppy and create a couple of turnovers to give Boston College, easy field goals. I don't know if maybe defensive touchdowns are the way that they get those, but I'm tempted to think that Oregon State is bad enough that Boston College could actually pull that game out.
Okay, Mike, a combined 0-17 in the Pac-12 and the ACC, but somebody's got to win this hypothetical matchup.
And another reason why I wish Dan Rubin was here, because he would be able to talk about Boston College some more. The Eagles are about to, not only did they not win a game in ACC playing football, they're about to do the same in basketball this weekend. they're about to. I don't know what the combination is. And whatever, but that's unfathomable. Two different sports. You didn't make a game in the ACC? Are you kidding me? Oregon State.
And I came across a basketball game the other night, and saw that Wake Forest was like 2-11 in the ACC, and they were leading BC 37-4 in the first half. I didn't watch the game. I just flipped by it. Well, I was at work. It was on one of our networks.
74-47 was the final there. So
all right, we got a 3-1 BC win. I'm going to go with the BC defense to win this game. Like, again, you guys threw out like 9-3, something in that range. So final score: Pac-12 30, ACC 18.
Wow, the comeback.
Big comeback in that one after Clemson and North Carolina, Florida State got the job done early.
Yeah.
All right.
But that's kind of like talking about ACC or SEC bowl wins in the past couple of years, where the top teams, from the one conference dominated, but the bottom of the conference kind of turned that tide. So if you look at the top, definitely ACC heavy, but the relative depth of the
there it
Pac-12,
is, ACC Breakdown. We're going to do this for the next couple of weeks, matching up the ACC against the other Power 5 conferences. For Cam Underwood from State of the U, Joey Weaver from the Rumble seat, and Mike McDaniel from inside the ACC, you guys catch us next week.
Catch you guys later.